Hi, Dr. Alina Kolchitsky, physical therapist, lifestyle medicine, nutrition, fitness, and more. I'm going to share with you one of my favorite recipes in the fall that was very common in my home growing up for Thanksgiving, but throughout the fall season it's delicious, and it's apple crisp. And I make mine gluten-free, dairy-free, and also very low in sugar. In fact, my sweetener of choice is not sugar. It is pure maple syrup, so we get all the antioxidants. First, I do want to show you, you want to make sure that you clean your apples well. Even if you buy organic, you still want to make sure that you scrub them. So I use a little cottage scrub brush, okay, and you could soak them in a baking soda solution. You just mix a baking soda with water and soak them to really get rid of all the pesticide residues. And I do buy my apples organic. I don't want apples that seem fresh but actually have been sitting on the shelf for 1 year, because that's what happens with GMO apples. And so yes, you want to make sure you really scrub the wells on both ends when washing. Now we have our apples clean, and I've scrubbed them, as you saw, including the wells, and we're going to cut them. So I'm going to make this size of a dish, so not a full casserole size dish, but an 8x8 size. And you could use definitely a bigger one if you want to for a larger group of people or household. And so I'm using here maybe just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 apples. They're large size. I'm using this golden one because of the really nice sweet flavor that we get once it bakes, when it cooks. You could use any kind of apples. It is nice to use a mixture of really sweet with really tart. I'm going to show you a little technique too to help reduce your pesticide intake. So I'm going to trim out the well, okay? So I'm cutting off that part on both ends. What is the well? It's this dip, right, where it dips down into the apple from the bottom side and the top side. So I'm going to trim that and make sure we don't ingest that. There we go. Yes, because even when buying organic produce, it isn't pesticide free. It is significantly less pesticide, so the pesticide load is decreased by at least 30% according to a Stanford study, but it is not pesticide free, unfortunately, because of our environment, the way everything eventually gets everything mixed in together, through rain, recycling of water, and so on, pollution in the air. So you name it. But anyway, so that's how you want to clean your apple. I do keep the skins because of the antioxidants and fiber in the skin is really rich. That's why we scrub them well and then peeled off the wells. But we're still going to keep the skin. The extra fiber, quercetin, especially also resveratrol in red skinned apples. It's significant, so don't throw away your skins. There's lots of nutrition to be had there, and apples are a nutrient-dense food, so it is a good way to prevent chronic disease. The research says that if you eat 2 servings of fruits a day is recommended. Obviously, we need also vegetables, but for the fruit component of that group, fruits and vegetables, just 2 servings a day. And the magical benefits from the fruits come from the antioxidants and fiber, as well as vitamins and minerals. But in apples, what it is highest in are antioxidants. So we've got the polyphenols, flavonoids, and quercetin is one of them that apples are high in. So quercetin has been found to help improve longevity. It reduces our risk for heart disease, reduces blood pressure, risk for diabetes, significantly actually. And so yes, eating an apple a day can keep your doctor away for real. And so also for brain health and your immune health, for the immune system, improves its function, and has been found to reduce risk for cancers, particularly breast, lung, and digestive. And so the fiber in the apple helps to reduce gastric emptying, to slow it down so that you absorb and break down things better, and actually reduces risks because of the fiber for acid reflux disease as well. So there are so many reasons why apples are good for us, and we're talking about whole apples, not apple juice. Those studies found these benefits from eating real whole apples, and they did not find the benefits to be the same if apple juice was consumed. So we don't want to extract and separate all that wonderful fiber where a lot of the antioxidants and polyphenols and flavonoids live, but rather consume them by eating the whole real food and not just separating the juice, which is really mostly the sugar left behind. Okay, so you see how I am slicing these thin so that they'll bake nicely, and we will continue to do that and prepare the pan. Next, we are going to just lightly grease the pan. I'm going to use my fat of choice today, which is a coconut butter. You could use coconut oil too. You could use olive oil. It will give a little slight olive oil kind of flavor to it, so if you don't mind that, go for it. It's a nice healthy oil to choose. And I recommend not using vegetable oil ever, and seed oils either. And I also don't recommend using any animal fats. So the more plant-based, the better in terms of preventing chronic disease. Okay, so we're going to now toss in all the sliced apples. As I said, you can layer it however thick you want. I do like a lot of apple, because for me, baked apple is the best part. So yummy. Honestly, I could eat that just by itself, the baked apple with cinnamon and nutmeg, just so yummy. So we're going to layer this and then sprinkle on some cinnamon. Oops, seed got in. And then again, I make my crumble very different than everybody else, because I do also want that to be substantial, not too thin. I want a good coverage on top of my crust. Okay. Okay, clean my surface after all the chopped apple. Let's add some cinnamon. So we're not baking cake. Things don't have to be exact here. You're just doing it for your own personal flavor and taste. Kind of like when you cook. So I like a lot of cinnamon. And nutmeg, organic. Just a sprinkle. And then we're going to toss that. My hands are clean. I've washed them. So we're just trying to incorporate the spices on all of the apple. But don't worry, when it bakes, it's also going to let some of that mix as the apple breaks down and juices flow. It will make the spices run and cover more evenly as well. We do want to make this nice and even for putting our crumble topping. So just try to separate any pieces stuck together and flatten things out a little bit. And we should probably get that oven preheated while we make our crumble. So it's 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And while that is heating up, we will make the crumble, which is super simple. Okay, so we are going to use 1/3 cup of fat. So again, I'm still using this one, which is my coconut fat. It's kind of sweet on its own naturally. So we get some natural sweetness from this choice of fat. Now, if you don't like the taste of coconut, then don't use this because it will taste a bit of a flavor of coconut. Okay, so we got that. This is kind of semi-solid. It is solid, what am I saying? It's not like an oil. It is a bit pasty, I want to say, in texture. Okay, we're going to add in maple syrup. You know what, let's try to melt this. We're going to melt it to see if that will just make it a little more liquidy to work with. Putting in the microwave just for 30 seconds. That's it. Because coconut fat has a pretty high melting point, so it will melt really easily. So I keep an eye on it in the microwave. Yeah. And then we're going to add our maple syrup. And again, I'm going to use just 1/3 cup. That's it. So pretty easy to remember to make this recipe. In terms of portions and ingredients, it's pretty simple. Yeah, that helped make it a little softer because I want to be able to incorporate this well with everything, with the oats, right? Once we get that in there. So 1/3 cup. Usually in baking, you add your liquids and creamy things, incorporate them together first, right? So that everything can mix together more evenly when you add your dry. Okay, so that was just organic, pure, dark maple syrup, 1/3 cup. That's it for sweetener. Notice I did not put any sugar in my apple mixture. So many recipes nowadays call for way too much sugar, and I was shocked when I went on Pinterest, this is just a dash of vanilla, that they want to put a whole cup of refined sugar on your apples and then another 1.5 cups in your crumble. That's like, no wonder we have obesity and heart disease, etc., etc. We're also adding some of these spices, again, to the crumble. So we have cinnamon, nutmeg, vanilla extract. That's it. Let's stir it all together. So yeah, the apples are sweet on their own, and when they bake, you know, the carbohydrate, the complex carbohydrate in the apple starts to break down and increase the sweetness, therefore, of the dish. So I do not need to add a whole cup of sugar to that. So just trying to make sure that the coconut fat is incorporated well. Now if I had used coconut oil, this would have been even easier to incorporate. And I welcome you to use coconut oil. But you know, I bought this as an experiment one time, the coconut fat, and I really like it. All it is coconut butter, nothing else. One ingredient. That's what I call minimally processed, which is the desirable way to eat if you're trying to live a long, healthy life, free of disease and misery, from health, poor health. Okay, so we got this nice creamy consistency. We can add our dry ingredients. So I'm putting in more than what they call for in a recipe. I'm going to use 1 cup of almond flour. It's gluten-free. I do normally buy organic. This one is just non-GMO. They were sold out of organic. So this is to replace your regular flour in the recipe. So we'll incorporate that. Get that mixing nice and well. Now it does call for a little bit of salt. So and that's more just as a flavor enhancer. So just half a teaspoon. Just eyeball that. And also half a teaspoon of baking powder. Again, super simple recipe. So pretty easy to remember how to make it once you've made it once. It's kind of locked in there to do again anytime, anywhere. Okay, can make cookies out of that. Okay, now we're going to add our oats. So most recipes call for 1 cup. I'm using 2. And my oats, I do buy organic. Did you know that oats are one of the most heavily sprayed crops of pesticides? And it's not just at the farm, it's after they've picked it and it's in a plant getting ready for shipping. Oats are really a moist crop. They tend to hold a lot of moisture. And so to make it easier to handle for food processing and shipping and packaging and so on, they dry it out by using pesticides. So they douse them again in pesticides to dry up the oats for all that industrialized processing for food production. So once you get to this stage, you're going to use your hands. So again, make sure everything is clean. And this is the best way to incorporate the moist into the dry oats. So yeah, if you can at all costs avoid regular oats, please do so for your own health, because the pesticide load in oats is crazy high. And in the United States, it's really high above allowable standards. Don't ask me how that gets to be allowed, but it is in the United States. Okay, it's looking nice and incorporated. So we've got this kind of crumble mixture here, and that allows us to form it over top of our apple mix. It gets pretty sticky, so it gets all over you very easily. So now we're just going to pour this on top. And again, mine was pretty, I like a lot of crumble on top. I would like good coverage. I don't like it when there's a ton of gaps or it's so thin that there's barely anything there. Just making sure I get everything out because I don't like to waste food. All right. So now we can spread this evenly across. Don't worry, it's not going to be a pile, a mountain. So you want to make sure you get it all the way into the corners. So then you just kind of tapping down, tamping, like you do with your espresso maker. It smells nice already from the spices. Okay, that looks pretty good. You can moisten your hands with water and just give it another little tap if you like. Just getting all the crumbs I've dropped along the way. There we go. Okay. Really have to wash those fingers well before I start touching things with the stove and the oven. So that's where this is going next, to the oven. As I said, it's on 350 degrees. Put it in the middle. And with this size of a baking dish, we're only going to put the timer for 30 minutes to start. We might need an extra 5, so we'll check on it after the timer goes off for 5 minutes. So yes, I hope that was pretty easy looking because it is, it really is. And this is quite healthy, so there's no gluten for people who are sensitive to gluten. There's no dairy because a traditional recipe does use butter for fat. And instead of sugar, we've put way less sugar. We've used only 1/3 of a cup of sweetener instead of 2.5 cups. That's a huge difference. And believe me, you don't need all that sweetener. And so you can use your sweetener of choice. I prefer pure maple syrup, dark, so that it has all those antioxidants. And use organic ingredients when possible because you want to reduce the pesticide load, especially with apples and oats. They are heavily sprayed in pesticides, as I mentioned. So we'll check back after 30 minutes. Okay, 30 minutes are up, so let's take a peek. And it's looking pretty brown and crispy along the edges, so we're going to pull that out. Don't do what I do. Use oven mitts, not a tea towel. It's much safer to not burn yourself accidentally. So how do you know it's done? Well, by looking at the crispy brownness. Okay, so it has that on top and on the edges. So the edges are a little bit darker brown. It's done. You don't want to cook it longer than that. Now, when it's fresh out of the oven, you do not want to put this straight into the fridge because you will probably crack your glass of your fridge and possibly your Pyrex dish too. You never know. So yeah, and ways to eat this. Well, it's nourishing because we didn't use very much sugar, right? So feel free to eat it for breakfast. I do that, and you can put some in a dish. You can even warm it up in the microwave to make it warm again because it always tastes really nice that way. Add some Greek yogurt. I've just used plain full-fat Greek yogurt, only 1/3 of a cup, and crumble some walnuts on there, just a few. And you could even put on like cranberry sauce. Check out my other recipe for my homemade cranberry sauce, which is more like a fruit chutney. It's really good for you and full of antioxidants. And all together, you've got lots of plants. So remember your goal of 30 plants a day for good diversity for your gut microbiome. I wanted to add, I used coconut fat, and some people may be sensitive to saturated fat. So please use what is appropriate for you. Again, you could use extra virgin olive oil. I don't recommend vegetable oil. And, the controversialness over saturated fat from palm and coconut oil, the tropical oils, is becoming less so because science is elucidating that saturated fat from plants is chemically different than saturated plant from animals. There's a lot more grayness to it. There is chemical differences, chemistry in terms of their structure, and it changes how our body uses it and treats it and stores it and what it does in our bloodstream and so on. So physiological processes are different for animal saturated fat versus plant saturated fat. So it may be fine for you, but that's something for you to discuss with your doctor and for you to know by testing. So by testing your blood work every year if you already eat a vegan or vegetarian diet without any animal fat or very little, and you eat a lot of coconut oil and you're saturated or your cholesterol is really high, then maybe it isn't for you. Everybody does have their genetic differences too. So just some things to be aware of and think about when you're choosing your ingredients to cook with. But again, experiment and make it your own. So if you don't like nutmeg, don't put it. If you like allspice, use that. Play with it. And it's your kitchen for your palate, and so don't be afraid to change things to suit yours. Thank you. Check out my other recipes. Bye for now.